Hello and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Alliance. For those of you who are joining us live, I want to go ahead and apologize. Even maybe those who are listening on podcast, because for one, Katie is not in her usual setting, so her volume might sound a little off, which is totally fine. But
And
I
my
have
camera's a little weird.
yeah,
Sorry.
it always disorients me because it's like as if I have drunk vision. Like while I'm talking to you, it's like everything is like going around in circles and up and down and in and it's all sorts of crazy. But also, for those of you who are joining us on YouTube, you can see that I have children with me. Actually, you can't see because I purposely put my daughter behind the chair. Uh, but you see my dog. My wife is currently in a work meeting, and we needed to record, and I didn't want to push, Katie to having to wait so long with her being at her parents' house. Which, Katie, thankfully, you were okay.
Yes.
I have heard and seen some crazy things come out of this hurricane.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane. And hopefully, there's not so much craziness. And I've already seen reports of like over like 100 deaths
Yeah.
already in your area
Um,
or where it was hit in South Carolina, North Carolina area.
it is mainly in the North Carolina area where the deaths have been occurring. I'm from the upstate of South Carolina, if anybody doesn't know that. Um, but we were out of power for 3 days. We did not have to experience being out of power very long because I have family that's about a couple hours away. Um, So we were able to take everything kind of get down and just get away from the chaos with a baby, like chaos is not
That's
fun.
the craziest thing. Because I had mentioned it in our GOA chat. A little insight on my life. Of course, everybody knows that I recently moved to Indiana,
Mhm.
but one of the choices was to live closer to Katie and some
Yep.
other members of the GUA. Um, and if I were to have done that, my wife Abby was saying like, "Man, could you imagine? Like, we wouldn't have anybody there to help us out, and we would have just been stranded with a 2-year-old."
Yeah, the worst thing we had was some lost groceries. Like it is what it is. I'm really thankful that um like we weren't in like the major path
Yeah,
and everything, and I'm really praying for Western North Carolina because like we were supposed to be off tomorrow and Friday to go apple picking and do stuff in Western North Carolina, and that's not happening now, obviously. Like
yeah.
Chimney Rock is gone. Like I grew up going to Chimney Rock. Like that's horrifying to me. Um
Yeah,
at
I
this
with my job, I didn't know this, but there is actually a lot of high industrial comic book printers
mhm,
in the area of Florida and all the way like moving up north on that coast. And a lot of them have actually been hit. So
mhm.
my job is getting more and more difficult every single day that we get updates. But thankfully, a lot of the people knew this was going to happen, and they took precautions to kind of negate a lot of the fallback from it. So, yeah, just a little life update there. But we do have very little news to talk about. Not a whole lot has happened since the last
Even
time
though
we
it's been
recorded.
2 weeks
It's
since we
been 2 weeks,
recorded last.
and nothing too crazy. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation about Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy, as well as the very difficult Dragon Con Star Wars trivia. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. But this week, we have some video game and technically video game, non-video game news. Um, so first one, I believe it was actually I shared it, and again, I need to stop using the Star Wars Alliance Twitter account.
But it was so helpful to add that account into
It
that
is.
chat.
It is. It's so helpful because it's a lot easier to grab things and reference them when we are talking throughout the episodes. But I get notifications and I immediately start to respond. And then, like, even Travis called me out on it. He's like, "Oh, thank you, Star Wars Alliance." And I'm like, "Son of a," but I did post this on our Star Wars Alliance chat saying that there are reports saying that Star Wars Outlaws only sold 1 million copies since launch. And I know a lot of people are like, a million? That's a lot. Holy crap. In retrospect, that is very, very minimal. Now, I will say it's not as small as some of the other releases that have happened in the video game world this year, because there have been some very, very mediocre and pathetic launches with things like Suicide Squad and even a first person shooter or a third person shooter. I can't remember what it was called Concord. Those have been the really big highlights in the video game world, but here, with Star Wars Outlaws having sold only 1 million copies, it is not great. And the reason being, Travis brought it up in our Star Wars Alliance chat. They put this on Game Pass. It has been a very weird thing for Xbox to test. And because, again, this whole entertainment world in the past 10 years have been revolving around subscriptions, whether that be for Netflix, whether that be
Mhm.
for, again, Xbox or PlayStation. We start to see subscriptions for some of the most, like, very simple things like photo storage. It's everything is surrounding subscriptions. And so Xbox was like, hey, let's do this Game Pass thing and we'll do some of the craziest deals so that way people will be invested in the Game Pass and then we'll make more money that way. It hasn't really turned out that way. um People have been purchasing the Game Pass for $15, beating the game within 1 month, and then turning off Game Pass. This is what people do for Netflix. They
Yep.
turn it on, binge the one show that they wanted to watch for that month's release, and then they cancel it. And then they move on with their lives. And people have gotten smarter with it. And that's how they have been playing these games. If you're going to offer this kind of service, then that's what you're going to do. I also said one of the biggest problems with this game, although it looked great, I think that, eventually I will play it. I still want to, but out of the gate, the biggest conversations about this game were about how expensive the extra content was.
Yeah.
Nothing solely focused on the game itself, the creative side of of the game. Like, you didn't have highlights of those things that really were outspoken enough to kind of shy away from the, oh my god, the DLC is 59.99 and $100. If you want to buy everything all at once, it's going to cost you $160. Like, it's not a great way to go for your game,
Yeah.
especially if you're wanting to move away from something like a uh Jedi Survivor or Jedi series, because you're like, okay, that is with a Jedi protagonist. We're going to try something else. Let's try something different. And you fumble right out the gate with it. It's not great for your future projects. I think this is going to make things like Eclipse, which we haven't heard a thing from in so many months,
Yeah.
it makes it harder for people to say, hey, I'm still invested in this game that still hasn't been made, but I hope it's really good, you know? So it's gonna be hard to see where Star Wars is in future gaming.
Yeah, Matt actually bought a copy of it. so that we could start kind of looking into it and everything. And he said it's like pretty decent. Like I watched a little bit of it to like watch things as it came along, and it like it feels pretty simple. I'm just not like I don't like the controls with video games and stuff. So, um, yeah, obviously not around our TVs and stuff right now. So once we get back, uh, we'll like look into it again and everything. Um, but the Game Pass thing was always stupid. It was always super stupid. To put a brand new game on there. I mean, like we saw like Deadpool and Wolverine, for instance. It was announced and people were like, "Oh, it's gonna be on Disney Plus October 1st." When it goes to like digital purchasing.
Mhm.
Like, and Disney quickly was like, no, not happening. Like,
Yeah, it's
so
because they need to make their money's worth, and with things like this, I know that a lot of video game companies are starting to push back on the decisions for both PlayStation and Xbox. Unfortunately, Xbox has kind of made it their like
mission.
uh, well, no, they've made it their like, hey, they've made it their deal breaker. Like, hey, if you want to make this game exclusive to Xbox, or if you want to make this game for us, it needs to be a day one Game Pass thing. And it's so funny because the head of Xbox has said time and time again, hey, I don't think this Game Pass thing is working out.
Mhm.
Like, maybe we should try something different. And then they don't try anything different. So I'm not
Yeah.
entirely sure what they plan on doing in the future. So we'll see.
Yeah. It's definitely something to just continue to keep an eye on because, yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
The camera is super freaking me out. I'm sorry, y'all.
But
Very distracting.
in other video game non-video game news, we have a scoop via Daniel RPK, which I think may not happen, but maybe it will because we actually saw a photo of something that really leans into the possibility of this happening. And it could have just been a tease or, something silly. But the reports say that Cal Kestis will reportedly make his live action debut in a Disney Plus Star Wars project. And I immediately said, I don't believe it. Travis was on the other boat saying, actually, I think this is likely going to happen comparatively to everything else. And I want to hear your opinion, Katie. How do you feel
Well,
about this scoop in general? And like, is it something that you think is more believable than a movie or just continuing his video game thing?
well, like we've talked about this before, and you had even said like, "Oh, I want him to come
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
live action," which totally makes sense. I mean, Cameron is an incredible actor. He did an incredible job as Joker in Gotham. He loves the character of Cal Kestis, so you think, "Oh, okay, makes perfect sense. Like, let's go ahead and bring him in." Um, so I think this makes sense, and I mean, we had even theorized, okay, Mandalorian and Grogu, Heir to the Empire movie, like stuff like that, where you could bring in additional resources and go,
Mhm.
hey, like, let's look at this. Um, in terms of Disney Plus project, I still think that leaves it open to interpretation because I mean, Mandalorian and Grogu, I mean, come on, that's a Disney Plus project. Like, let's just be real now.
It is the Disney Plus project, but of course it is going to be in theaters. So
Yes.
I am curious if they are really pushing, and this is an actual genuine question because I don't think we've ever talked about it before either. But the idea of, is Mandalorian Grogu going to be one of those that has to stay like hard within the budget, or is this going to be a movie because of the subject matter of it being the Mandalorian, their swan song right now for Star Wars? Is this a movie that can kind of break the rules a little bit and be like, well, if you go a little bit over budget, it's fine? Because we just recently had a conversation in the GUA chat where I was a little salty about everything that's been going on recently, but I was like, hey, the decisions that Disney has made recently have not been super great. And I think, it's a little sus, all the information that's coming out very conveniently
Yeah,
and everything else. So I would want to know with the Mandalorian and Grogu, like it is a Disney Plus project, but I don't think they're looking at it as a Disney Plus project. I think this is a high budgeted movie, even though it's not high budget.
yeah, and I agree, but I'm also like, you're not gonna escape the Disney Plus dung that you've roped yourself into by having these characters start off on Disney Plus. Because I mean, we've talked about it. Like, is it going to come down to Mandalorian and Grogu is just a flashback movie where we get all the flashbacks from season 1, season 2, and season 3 to kind of catch us up for the Heir to the Empire movie? Like, you just can't escape that. You say, "Oh, this is going to theaters." People are going to be like, "Oh, this is a Star Wars movie." "Oh, but I don't know who these characters are." "Oh, you're telling me I need to go watch Disney Plus and subscribe to Disney Plus? Okay, maybe I won't go see this in theaters." Like, that's the risk you're taking here.
Yeah.
Um, on top of the news that RPK has also put out that there will be no Mandalorian in season 4. We are getting Mandalorian and Grogu, and that's gonna be it. But Din Djarin will still continue to make appearances in other projects. So, like,
It's
I completely see how
that's
cast this is plausible.
that's an interesting statement. The the whole thing of Mandalorian Grogu ending, we said that a long time ago. Like, oh, with Mandalorian Grogu, this is probably the end of the Mandalorian TV show.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's gonna be in other projects, we said that Mandalorian Grogu and or possibly, of course, the Heir to the Empire movie
Yeah.
would be his swan song. And that's when he would possibly die as a character.
Right,
Like,
but you think other project, okay, Mandalorian and Grogu, Heir to the Empire movie.
that's
Like,
true. Yeah.
so that is an other project, even though
Yeah.
it's RPK's scoop said other projects. Like, I think it's all willy-nilly right now. I'm apparently a super big cynic right now in terms of all
Oh,
things in life.
well, not only
So,
that, but us as Star Wars fans, I think we should be cynics after the things that have been happening recently. Like,
yeah.
it's really hard to be that 100% positive individual. But I, because you were right, you're absolutely right. When we first talked about Cal Kestis getting a live action adaptation, I said 100%. I'm totally for it. But for the fact that this scoop specifically says debut in a Disney Plus Star Wars project, I took that at face value, meaning Disney Plus. And so I say, after what the Lucasfilm and Star Wars and Disney have been like looking at Star Wars at Disney Plus, like, no, that's not possible. Like, it's not a huge investment as
You know what
far
I've got
as
money on? You know what I've got money on? And it's something that we've talked about before, and it's he's going to be in Ahsoka season 2, so we're gonna get past Mandalorian and Grogu. We're
Mhm,
going to have the 3rd and final Jedi video game come out,
mhm.
and then he's going to be in Ahsoka season 2, and he's going to be working with Ezra to get back to Perdia or Peridia and get Ahsoka and Sabine off and back to our galaxy.
I dig it. I think that
That's
would be fun.
that's what I got money on.
I would say yes. Because I think he would be way too old and or dead, maybe, in the Rey Skywalker new trilogy.
Yeah. Well, and the other reason I put that up is kind of knowing how the Jedi video games are in the timeline. So you've got like 10 ABY, probably like, or I'm sorry, 10 BBY, 7 BBY, I think. I'm not looking at a timeline off the top of my head. Um, and
Just
then you've
smile and wave,
probably
Clay. Just smile and wave. It's years in Star Wars. The timeline, yeah, just act like everything's good. Yeah.
but he's in the rebellion time frame. So if you go 5 years into the future, you're in the rebels time frame.
Hmm.
So you've probably got a rebels crew mission in the final season that we didn't get on TV for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But you bring that rebels crew in and do a mission, and that's your introduction to Ezra. And that's how Ezra knows, hey, Cal Kestis is out there. That's the other Jedi I can talk to. Let me go find him so he can help me.
I like that because in the first Jedi game, we did meet
Saw
or
Gerrera.
Saw exactly. And we have seen Saw in so many different parts of his life, and he was in Rebels. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes perfect sense for them to have missions the way that they did completely across the galaxy at times. Yeah, I think that makes total sense that they would bump into each other eventually.
Yeah.
And of course, them being quiet about it would make even more sense because of how scarce the Jedi needed to be. So, yeah, I'm for it.
Yeah. And since you brought it up, we didn't put this on the news, but it's been 2 weeks since we've talked um for our regular episodes. And so one of the things that came out was that the Acolyte was not at its budget of 180 million. It was
Yes, yes.
actually at 230 million dollars, which is still, in my opinion, yes, it's not where TV needs to be, but you can't tell me that spending $300 million on The Force Awakens for 2 hours and 15 minutes versus 5 hours.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh no,
where does the math line up? I don't
I
understand
totally am
studio
on
budgets.
I'm on your side. Because again, you can look at I can't even remember what Loki season 2 budget was. But like we know that early MCU projects on Disney Plus were a shit ton of money. People were like,
Mhm.
"Oh, they're taking movie budgets and putting it into TV shows."
Yeah, I wanna say Mandalorian was, like, 250.
It I would not be surprised at all. And I
Loki,
will
massive
I
season 2 budget revealed, $141.3 million.
I will say this. If 200 is the like, hey, this is what's keeping streaming shows to 8 episodes a season, then cut it. Cut the budget.
Yeah,
If it means that we can get more episodes in a season, that doesn't make sense logically, but hey, if that's how it's going to be, then that's what it's going to be. I need somebody. I am freaking uh Michael Scott from The Office. Explain it to me like I'm 5 because I feel like that's what I need for some of
mhm.
these things as far as the
Yeah,
budget and stuff goes.
so I said Mandalorian was 300 million. It was actually 120 million. And that is apparently the budget for The Mandalorian and Grogu, which makes sense. You have all the production already set up. Like there's no need for it. And that doesn't The Mandalorian season 1 got a very high marketing budget because it was part of the Disney Plus launch, which is probably why I was thinking 300 million.
Mhm.
Um Obi-Wan with 6 episodes was 150 million. So yes, The Acolyte is up there, but it also was scouting real locations. And the Forbes article also said one of the problems was that they hired actual staff instead of freelancers for a total cost of $26 million. Okay, so you paid your people and got them health insurance.
Yeah, and that is always gonna be an argument, a valid argument, by the way. I'm not saying that to be like, "Oh, okay, it's not that big of a deal here." No, it is a valid argument that people need to understand, "Hey, people need to have a livable wage and health insurance." Those are 2 very important things that need to happen.
Yeah,
Um
and so the Acolyte started filming on the tail end of when COVID was a huge mess. Um,
mhm,
and then it had to deal with a strike in the middle of it. So you sat there waiting for these actors to be able to promote the project. Like, yes, your budget balloons. Like Mission Impossible's budget, 8 and
yeah.
9 ballooned. Like, these things happen. Like, this is what you're dealing with. So the whole budget argument, and especially like we talked about in the GUA chat, yes, I can hear the budget concerns. Okay, I fully admit, okay, if you're over budget, then yes, that's a problem. Season two's not going to cost you that much more money. Like, it's because all your locations, all your sets are already done. Like, so that's easy for me to see. But the fact of the matter is that if you couldn't put this information out when the show got canceled originally, why a month later?
And that's what got me all fired up when we were talking about it. It was the fact that Agatha all along started to get negative press over worldwide viewership and worldwide viewership that wasn't worldwide. I can't remember exactly what the semantics were for it, but for the fact that just coincidentally, after all of this talk of Agatha not doing great, oh, by the way, Acolyte didn't do all that great either on its budget. It's like that has nothing
Yeah,
to do with Agatha right now. Why are you throwing
yeah.
this information out at me right now?
It feels like a distraction technique, and yes, Agatha cost way less money than Acolyte did. I'm fully giving that the credit it deserves. Different productions, different environments to set up in. Um, and it's just it blows my mind.
Yeah, and
Like
I will also be one to say this, and people can argue with me and want to argue with me. I say just argue with a wall. Different shows entangled in different genres based on the content that are in those shows should have widely different budgets.
Mhm,
You should not be saying, "Hey, Agatha was a 47" I'm just throwing a number out there. $47 million budget. Let's make a Star Wars show with $47 million. That's like people could say, "Yeah, that's genius," but it's not to a certain degree. I
mm,
understand why it would be genius because then you're like, "Oh man, we're really profiting off of
yeah.
this." But at the same time, you need to think about the quality of the IP that you are in control of. Like,
The quality, but also, like you said, different environments. So Agatha's set in modern day society, it's not in a science fiction realm.
yeah,
So
not only that, but like suburban area, like it very easy to access in legit real world. Whereas Star Wars, a made up galaxy with a
mhm,
lot of alien stuff, needs to have a bigger budget for props, for the scenery, for everything.
mhm. And Andor season 1 had a budget of 250 million. But both shows look incredible.
Yes.
Like, so if the problem is that okay, these aren't making enough money. Well, yes, we could have told you that the streaming realm is not going to make you money. Like, it's not. So if you should have made The Acolyte into a movie and done a movie budget for it, for,
So
well, there's your movie budget.
So I also need to look at this real quick because a lot of people were also talking about how genius uh the Penguin show is. So from here it is saying that Penguin is 180 million.
Mhm.
So again though, different realm of things. This also debuts on HBO,
Yep.
simulcast onto HBO Max. So it airs at the same time as HBO and HBO Max. That you entangle things like commercials and advertisement and monetization in different realms in that case. So I have to ask you this
Now, I'm
because
not caught up on Agatha or Penguin right now.
neither am I. I haven't seen a single episode of Penguin yet, and I've only seen the first episode of Agatha. But what I'm going to ask you is we have seen time and time again viewership of HBO shows make bukus of numbers. They pop off. And there's a what's the phrasing I'm looking for? There is a mindset, a set in stone idea for what an HBO show should be, right? As far as the
Right.
quality and
Well,
everything
and the fact of the
else.
matter is Penguin was added as an HBO show after it was already filmed. So this is Zaslav trying to integrate more things into HBO and make the HBO money. However, I've seen the first episode of Penguin and it looks incredible
Well,
and is
what
really
I'm
well
what
done.
I'm asking
So,
you is is the route to go, and I know of course we've seen it happen with Andor, but Andor went on to FX. I believe, right? It was FX that
yeah.
it went on. It went on to FX. It was advertised as, "Hey, the first 3 episodes are here. If you want to watch the rest, you have to subscribe to Disney Plus." Do they go the HBO Max route and say, "Hey, every Star Wars show that we create is now going to debut on FX and Disney Plus at the same time." Is that something that Disney should consider doing in order to reach the numbers that they want as well as getting the monetization that they want?
Maybe that could potentially be a very good idea. And just capitalizing on some ad revenue. I mean, I've got Disney Plus ads right now, so it's like, whatever.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I could totally see that. Because that is Disney's HBO for all intents and purposes. So,
Yeah, and I was trying to think of like where that would be, and I assume because Andor went to FX that's where it would be. You do have things like gosh, I don't even know what they call it nowadays, but it was for the longest time ABC Family.
yeah,
I don't know what it is called nowadays, but like I don't know if that would necessarily be the right place for the high budget shows. I think FX is that
yeah,
because you also have things like Justify and Fargo, and again, those set in stone, high quality type of shows on FX. So I think that might be the route to go if they were to go in that route. I
yeah.
am going to go ahead and ask you guys that are listening now, like, do you think that is a good idea? D- d- Do you think that they should go into more of a cable network as far as like Stars or one of those channels as well? I don't Stars was the first thing I went to. I have no idea who owns that, by the way. But it's just an interesting thought. Now, I don't like the walking backwards into cable. Like I hate the idea of cable because it was the whole reason why I did Netflix and streaming was, hey, I don't have to watch commercials and I don't have to wait for the next episode. Um, it kind of annoys me that there is live TV on Disney Plus. Like I click it just for Amber Lynn to be able to watch multiple shows without me having to switch through the channels. But like at the same time, I'm just like, we could just binge one whole show and be silly and watch this one show. I don't need to watch all of whatever you program the live to be, because maybe I don't want to watch The Little
Yeah.
Mermaid right now, or maybe I don't want to watch Spider-Man right now. I want to watch something else. So it's, for me, I don't like the change to cable, but maybe that is the direction they go in order to get the ad revenue that they want.
Yeah. I know, I mean, we heard I know when cable was closing up, everybody was like, "Oh, like, yes, they make bukus of money, but the cable programs get most of that money."
Yeah.
And then so that's why everybody went streaming. But everybody knew streaming was not gonna get you the same amount of money. And it's clear because the cost of streaming services just keeps climbing. So, yeah, we'll see what
Uh
happens.
Last thing on our news docket, uh George Lucas has, we said that you were going to lean us into this one, so go ahead and head us out to
Yes.
there.
So, hang on. Sorry. I had to pull it back up because X is dumb. Okay, so Chris Castellani did an interview with prequel trilogy Star Wars stunt coordinator Nick Gilliard. Um and Gilliard revealed a lot of exciting, never before heard details about the prequel trilogy. This interview was coagulated into text because it's a YouTube interview, but it was done by the Hollow Files. So you can go check it out there. Um, but the stunt coordinator revealed that George Lucas filmed so much footage for the prequels that there are 3 more movies and footage left on the cutting room floor across the 3 films.
I need, like, I whatever they, because I don't have that kind of time to do this, people. I know people every single time I say it, people are like, "Oh, you need to watch it one day, like just one day, just watch all three." The extended versions of Lord of the Rings,
Oh my
the
god.
trilogy, I don't have the time. But if you were to tell me, "Hey Clay, they have now made 3 extended versions of episode 1, 2, and 3," I'm calling in from work. Like, I am watching those movies because
Yes.
it's great to think about. For one, we have been able to experience some of what people speculate are in these films through the books that we've been reading. So,
Mhm.
people are like, "Oh, was there more like Padawan Kenobi?" It's like, oh, well, we've had like 3 books of that already. So we got to experience a little bit of that. And the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Well, we have Brotherhood for that. So, like, there are things out there, but just being able to see it, I think it would be really fun to
Yeah.
experience.
Uh, and like it's definitely not going to be like, oh, here's 3 additional movies. Like this is additional footage for the film.
Yeah.
So like you said, extended cuts. And I mean, this interview basically confirms the rumors that the original cut for Revenge of the Sith was over 4 hours long.
Yeah.
So,
Like,
um
that gets me excited. Now, I did not like, and again, everybody can go argue at a wall. Um, I was not a huge fan of the length of Zack Snyder's Justice League. I liked Zack Snyder's Justice League, but I didn't like the length.
yeah.
Star Wars, because of Katie converting me to this religion, I could totally sit down and watch a 4 hours, like, I could sit down and watch a 4-hour, like, binge of Star Wars TV shows. I can do 1 movie, like,
Yeah.
easy.
For sure, and, it's like, as long as it's from home, right? And that's just
Yeah,
the benefit of HBO Max with Zack Snyder's Justice League is you could pause it
exactly.
and take an intermission to go to the bathroom. Um, he also revealed information about the iconic battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan. A version of the scene that was filmed featured Anakin grabbing Obi-Wan from the throat, disarming him, and saying, "I'm really sorry you have to be killed." Anakin then proceeded to try to cut Obi-Wan's head off, a move which was then deflected by Obi-Wan to cut Anakin's arms off. Gillard also stated that he and the team hated the high ground scene in Revenge of the Sith, and that they campaigned as hard as they could to get it changed, but George Lucas was having none of it. He believes the scene in the final cut was Steven Spielberg's idea.
So, a little bit of fun video game knowledge and spoilers for people who haven't played the Revenge of the Sith video game adaptation. There is a what if version of that ending where Anakin does kill Obi-Wan at the end of that game or of that scene. So that version you do get to see in video game form. So it's out there if people want to. I think you can still play it on PC and stuff. I don't know if you can find it on the original Xbox and the PlayStation 3. But yeah, it's as soon as you started talking about it, I was like, holy crap, I've seen that. It's in a video game. Um but yeah, I was really surprised with the and I shouldn't be surprised because we know that George Lucas and Steven Spielberg have a very good relationship in Hollywood
Yeah.
and they're good film buddies. So it shouldn't surprise me, but at the same time, I'm like, of all people, Steven Spielberg. Okay, sure, okay, fine. Um, but I think one of the things that was really surprising to me was the uh gruesome Jedi Temple fight that was
Yes.
revealed to be in the original cut of Revenge of the Sith. So Gillard played the Jedi Sindralig in Revenge of the Sith and is briefly seen dueling Hayden Christensen's Anakin Skywalker via hologram. Of course, this I assume would be the scene, and you can even see it in the clip, is where Yoda and Obi-Wan are looking at the footage, and Yoda's like, just see it for yourself, whatever.
Yep.
Um, and Gillard provided new details about the original version of the scene that were filmed. Anakin stabs a small girl right through the throat, holds her by it while he grabs another one. Uh, he says it is nasty. It was nasty.
I'm assuming that was cut because they didn't want a rated R cut.
Yeah, but like, and that's it's so tricky because if you look at the semantics of like what makes a rated R film as far as
Mhm.
like the gore, the blood, the violence, da da da, da, you can kind of cheat with Star Wars because it's like, oh, it solders everything. So it's like
Yeah,
there's no blood, there's no gore. It's just very graphic in the sense of like you're, just slicing
and like
through
a child.
meats, you know? And that's the thing. Like it was a child. It's a Padawan that you're doing this to. So like I don't know how you get away with that. And I think it's smart for them to cut it. And I would even say if for some reason George Lucas one day does say, "Hey, we're making these 3 extended cuts." I don't think you even put it in there.
No, um, you don't show that kind of stuff. Like, it's enough that it's insinuated. Um,
I would say make the scene to the point where you have to cut to Obi-Wan because there's a scene where Obi-Wan like covers his mouth because he's in like shock that it's happening.
yeah,
That's where you make the cut to Obi-Wan, like right before you see the actual stab, and then go back to the fight and whatever. So I think that you can do a little bit of movie magic to make the scene at least have the weight of it being like, holy crap, like we're actually seeing a little bit more than we did in the original version to
yeah.
make it worth it, you know?
I don't think Disney would put that out because Lucas doesn't own the footage now, so
Yeah,
Disney
no.
would have to make the choice to
Yeah.
do that. But Gilliard also explained that Lucas was involved in every department in making the prequels, from cinematography, visual effects, art direction, fight choreography, costume design, sound design, production design, casting and acting, and more. So
So
he
here's
was incredibly
here's
involved. This was a passion project for him, people.
yeah, and that's where I have to ask, do we think Filoni is doing this? Is he a part of every step?
No.
Should he be involved in every step? Because that's something we also didn't talk about. The decision, wasn't it like sometime last week that we saw that he's going, I know we were talking about it in our Star Wars chat. Where was it? Where was it? Um oh shoot. We both, me and Snell, were going back and forth about the Filoni stuff. I don't right here. The Dave Filoni being the goalkeeper of like how everything's supposed to line up and everything. And we've heard about this before, about him being the last man to be like, hey, yes, this
Yeah.
happens, or hey, no, this doesn't happen. So he is definitely the guy in the chair for all things Star Wars, but he's not there at every step. And I think that needs to change. I think if he wants to be the guy in the chair, he's got to be there all the time.
Correct. And like you look at it and people for Marvel, sorry y'all, I had to change position and now the camera's just freaking out. You look at Marvel and Marvel has all of this stuff to go off of, and yes, they're creating new characters or modifying characters, but they still have things to go, okay, this is what Wanda's costume should look like. And being able to reference that and mock up different versions. Whereas Star Wars doesn't have a lot of visual interpretation, it's a lot of written interpretation. So costume designers need a little bit of help. I wouldn't say being involved in like, oh, this is how this Twi'lek should dress, but like looking at the design and going, okay, yes, that passes. Like,
Yeah.
but not like, hey, let's pick out every single piece of clothing. Like,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
we know Lucas very much wanted to make the prequels as a passion project, and that's what he did. And there's not a problem with that, but I think they're two different people. And Filoni's involved in way too much nowadays to go, "Hey, let's get down into the nitty-gritty and be involved in every decision."
Yeah.
Like, that's just not something one person can do.
100%. But yeah, that seems to be it for the news. And now is our aftermath review. Katie,
Aftermath,
I
life debts.
yes, aftermath life debt. I was typing the title of this live stream, and by the way, guys, I'm running off of 45 minutes of sleep. I did not sleep very well last night, and
Pretty much same.
I was just typing along, and then I looked and I typed in afterlife math debt, and I'm like, hold on. And I had to look at it for a while, and I was like, this isn't right. Backspace, backspace, backspace. Aftermath life debt. Okay. So, guys, Katie and I, when we it's been a while since we finished this book already. We were talking and we're like, is this any better than what we read on the first one? Like, I don't know. And I will say this. I think that Chuck Wendig took criticism. He had to. I think he saw criticism of the first book and he was like, how do I fix this? Oh, I know. I'll take a part of the hero trio and put it as a selling point of this book, and boom, Han Solo, Chewbacca, Princess Leia being actual somewhat more of a vocal piece of this
So I
story.
hate to break it to you. I don't think he took any fan criticism.
Oh no, I was giving him the benefit of the doubt by saying those moments were okay, but the book overall, Katie, I was reading the Wikipedia today and I'm like, I don't remember any of this because I don't care about this book. Like it's rough.
So
It's so rough.
it is. So the first book, sorry guys, again, trying to make things work. Um, so the first book was published in September of 2015. This book was published July of 2016. So this
So it
book
was
was
already
already basically
in
off to the printers
it
by
was
the time the
already
first
in
book came out.
production while the first one was out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I would agree. I think this one is slightly better simply because we don't have to play introduce the character.
Yes, I think that is something that it does very, very well. And I will say this personally, I think that oh gosh, I forgot his name when we first did the
Mm,
first review. Sinjir,
yes.
the
I do love
old
Sinjir.
Sinjir's character growth from the first one to this one is massive in the sense of in the first one we see him like he has a little bit of a backbone but like he's
Yeah.
still like very skittish and he's like I don't know what to do here he's like stabbing people in the back and like he's like killing people and like holy crap like he was doing some dark stuff and I was like oh like I can get behind this cool I get that. It's everything around it that is not so great. Like, and again, you have people like, and I say people ironically, Mr. Bones. He's a character that I think like he's just one of those characters that every Star Wars book needs to have. That's like, hey, where's the quirky droid that everybody's gonna fall in love with? Oh, that's Mr. Bones. Like that's just every
I do
Star
love
Wars
Mr.
project.
Bones.
It's every Star Wars project. You're gonna find a quirky, whether he's verbal or non-verbal droid. You're gonna find a quirky droid in a Star Wars project. It's just
Yeah.
it's the number one rule. Um, and I really love Mr. Bones because he is the comic relief when you didn't need comic relief, and it's there. Um, but also he has some really badass moments sometimes. Um, my question to you is there is one moment that should have been a huge plot twist that we all saw a mile away. Or at least I would hope people saw this a mile away because I immediately I'm like, nope, don't believe it. I something's gonna happen, and I think I know what's gonna happen. We see the husband
Yes.
of of
Nora.
Nora, and of course her son, and they we learned very early on in the last book that he was missing. He was we didn't know if he was captured or what, and all of these different things. We get that answer here, and he gets saved.
Hmm.
I need to know, Katie. I know, and I won't judge you for it if it did surprise you because it's like, okay, yeah, cool. Like it the scene kind of showed it like coming, but
Yeah.
how did you feel about the scene where we see Nora's husband turn on the Republic?
I definitely saw it coming. I knew it was going to happen because, again, I've read the Wikipedia pages before to kind of give myself the story because I was having so many issues getting through Aftermath itself.
Mhm.
So, um, I knew it was coming, but it was very obvious from the fact that when we were talking, like, on Kashyyyk, and Han was like, "Oh, they have chips so they can control the Wookiees and, like, do things and everything," and it's like, "Okay," and then all these prisoners managed to get picked up from I think it was Kashyyyk, and Nora's
Mhm.
husband is among 'em, and I was like, "Yeah." But I've also read the X-Wing series, which the X-Wing series does something very similar, where the Lusankya with, um, Isard, Yasan Isard, she does not use chips. She torments her captives and basically
Ah, okay.
makes them secret agents where they can
Mhm.
then be activated and then they go and kill their target, basically. So it was something very similar, I felt like, where um Wendig was basically like, okay, what can I do here to kind of draw up this tension and make this kind of work?
Mhm.
So Um, it was very obvious. I felt like, especially if you've read the X-Wing series, but
Yeah.
also you haven't read the X-Wing series and you were like, "Oh, this is very obvious."
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
what did you think about Gallius Rax? Because he is a prominent figure in the comic series that started up this week.
Rex. I'm trying to remember.
Rax is the fleet admiral who is secretly controlling Sloane, even though Sloane is technically in charge of the Empire.
Yes. I dug more than I thought I would. And I think this is more so just because she has been such an interesting character since we've read her in other stories as well. I really like Sloane, and I think that every story attached to her does intrigue me a little bit more so to see where she ends up is my big thing. And with the reveal that like cuz there's this whole talk of like oh a secret council and we're going to do this and oh Sloan if you don't make the choice then I'm going to make the choice and we're going to rule the galaxy without you and we have seen time and time again in the first one as well as this aftermath sequel the amount of just despicable toxic masculinity towards Sloane. Now again, guys, we understand they are the bad guys. And so of course
Mhm.
you like it's like, "Oh, what are bad guys supposed to be?" But like we also know that everybody in the empire is always trying to one up each other because it was ingrained in them like hey you need to be better than your superiors so that way Palpatine can see you as who you are and you get promoted and all of these other things.
Yeah.
Palpatine's dead like people like you don't have to do this anymore. You can be a actual functioning military and quite possibly take over the republic, but you're so fixated on like stepping on everybody else's toes. That's what I hate the most about the Empire, by the way, in every aspect of whether it be the video games, whether it be these novels, or even in the Legends novels, it always happens. But here, I I dug this. I did like the idea of like there was a puppeteer the entire time, you know?
Yeah.
I really dug that.
I do too, especially as it kind of leads into, Palpatine, like, secret on Exegol, like, the final empire kind of thing. I think that makes a bunch of sense to include that. Obviously, at this point, Wendig did not know kind of final plans, but he knew, like, okay, Like we have a first order and we've got to get there somehow. So I think
Yeah.
that connection makes sense in the grand scheme of things. Uh one of the problems that I had with this um was, because it's mentioned quite a few times as kind of like a joke element, I feel like. Um, but the breeding program.
Yeah. Mhm.
Like, clearly it doesn't work out because they have to go kidnap kids across the galaxy to fill in their stormtrooper roles.
Yeah.
I just don't think it plays well long term. It's also really weird. Like,
I it was I I don't have an opinion on it because again, like you said, it was a little bit of a joke, a little bit of a meme, especially for us that like know the story and it's not just somebody who is just like picking up this book and it's like, "Oh, what is this?"
mhm.
But like I where else do you go with it though? Like that's my question to you is like if like you know what I mean? Like what other story element would you throw in there personally?
I don't know, like, you take up, like, recruiting something, but, like, hey, like, let's encourage everybody to have kids and, like, literally call it a breeding program. Like, it's just a little weird.
Oh, I
It
mean,
sounds very cultish.
I was gonna say, considering the political climate that we're in, it's kind of hitting really close to home. So it's definitely a very off-putting thing. But you also have to remember this is a like secret empire that's not so secret. So they can't just be like, hey, we're recruiting, you know?
Yeah.
So of course they had to just be like, hey, this is what we're doing. We're everybody's gonna have kids and they're gonna be the next greatest army for the empire. Like it's again, like you said, very cultish, very weird, and like I said, very close to home right now, and it's very, very awkward. Um, I'm trying to think of so how did you feel about the story of Han, Leia, and Chewie? This idea that like for me, like the very beginning, I was just like, this is kind of stupid because like Han is like, I have to go save Chewie. I'm like, okay, yeah, he's your best friend. Like, that's okay. But when Leia's trying to argue, like, we can get the entire Republic to help you, and he's like, no, I gave up my commission. I'm no longer a part of the Republic. I'm a smuggler again. Like,
Well, and he does state it's because they've already argued with the Republic and Mon Mothma doesn't want to go after him. This is the problem with kind of like a peaceful mindset of, "Oh, we just rebelled, but we want a republic of peace. So
yeah,
we're gonna dismantle our entire army and not approve anything unless we're attacked first." Like, that's basically the stance Mon Mothma takes, but you can't do that because, and I like the tagline with the comic that's kind of coming up, "A war is not won. A war is won in stages."
hmm,
Like, it is not just, "Oh, this is the final battle." Like, the final battle takes years,
yeah,
and it's something that, and I know, like, Wendig ultimately was trying to hit on the points of, "Hey, this republic's gonna fail, and this is why it's gonna fail." But you would also think, "Hey, let's learn from Star Wars Legends where it took 20 years for the new republic and the Empire to come to terms and finally resolve the war." Like, I
hmm.
think there was maybe a little bit better way to go about doing it than just like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna cut all funding to defense mechanisms and like as soon as we can, we're gonna wrap this up."
And that's why, like, I do like the and because technically, guys, you still have to remember this is canon. Like, you have to look at it as something that is not Legends at all. This is literally leading up to what we know of as the sequel trilogy. But you look at this book and then look at something like Princess and the Scoundrel,
Hmm.
you know, and the protocols that they went through, and how, okay, yeah, it's, about them being on a honeymoon, but also there's this mission that could very well be, we see a completely different side of Mon Mothma, not so very far apart technically.
Yeah.
And so it's
And
like,
and I do like the pregnancy moments we get with Leia. It's kind of cool to get to see her interact with Ben through the forest, like especially
mhm,
meditating with that plant from Endor. I think it's just some really special moments that kind of show like, hey, this is what can happen
mhm.
um in a galaxy far, far away. Um and like ideally that's what I like to think happened with Mara because like I felt like she was a girl from the start. So it kind of like drew up happy memories with that.
And I really dug it too because, we have people who stand the hell out of freaking Ben Solo, like
Mhm.
even our one and only Travis, like he wants all the Ben Solo stuff. He doesn't want the Kylo Ren stuff. He wants the Ben Solo stuff. So like seeing that this is technically a part of canon, I think is a very fun moment and a very special moment for sure. And I hope that we do get to see some of this stuff in, you know, what will be, well, you said it started today, the Star Wars comic.
Yeah. And I do want to clarify, so the chips that are within the Wookiees and the prisoners are all technically called inhibitor chips. So it's kind of a
Mhm.
good connection between the clones chips like hey, we learned something from this, so let's use it in other places. So that's a good connection to make.
Yeah.
Um but ultimately like and I'm scrolling on my phone through this summary here because again, it's been a while since we read this.
Yeah.
Um And ultimately, I just think this series suffers from first book in a new series,
Mhm.
basically. Like that's what it's suffering from. It's got all this room to play with, but it also has the parameters of meeting The Force Awakens
Well,
somehow.
and also something that I wanted to talk to you about, because we've seen books that take place now technically before uh even this, and they decide to go back, like, and when I say recently, I'm talking about uh uh Adam Christopher, uh
Shadow of the Sith.
Shadow of the Sith, and Princess and the Scoundrel, and again dealing with our three heroes. And I wonder if it was because something like this, you take this book and you're like, okay, we're dealing with a whole ragtag group of characters that just aren't
Mhm.
connecting with the readers. And I think it's a shame for sure, but also like maybe the lesson was learned. It's like, hey, let's actually tell these stories with the characters that we only technically only stayed with for a couple of hours in this film. We can expand on some of their journeys after the movie. And I think that's very important. Like I genuinely do, but you have to, I think there's a very fine line of where you can throw, because I haven't read any of the Alphabet Squadron and stuff like that. So those books, from what I hear from you, are absolutely amazing. I don't know what the other reception is from that, but I'm sure it doesn't have Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, and Princess
Mm-mm.
Leia all the damn time, right? So
No, I don't think they're mentioned at all. Hera is the only kind of other character in those books.
yeah, so I'm very interested in, I would like to be I would have liked to be the fly on the wall at the publishing uh building when they decided, hey, this route isn't really working out. Let's try something else.
Mhm.
Um and I don't know what it is because like we said, Sinjir is a character that has grown. Like we've seen the development there. I don't know if it is like oh, I personally don't like the big burly dude. What's his name? Freaking Jace.
John Burrell.
Is it is it John Burrell?
So
The one
there's
that loses his
John.
eye.
Yeah, John.
John. I don't like him. I do
I
not
don't
like
like
him.
him either. I don't think he's grown at all. But we also didn't really know him that much in the first book because he's kind of introduced towards the
Hmm.
end.
Yeah.
I don't think Jazz has grown at all, like other than like the small little like, oh, we'll take a credit as like our I don't feel like she gets a ton of time to like showcase that growth. Sindri gets a lot of time. Timon, I enjoy getting to know him more. Nora, I feel like, is another character where she feels like she's the main character of this book, of this series, rather,
Hmm.
and she's left by the wayside because she's split between like, oh, I'm falling in love with Wedge. My husband, like, kind of accepted my husband must be dead. Oh, wait, but my husband is here. And then we kind of skip a month, and then, like, the chaos happens where he shoots Mon Mothma and stuff. Like,
Yeah. I'm also gonna say Wedge is a little bit of a ladies' man. Like
yes!
in here and in Legends books, he is just like and which is what I like. Did they somewhat insinuate that the Legends book was actually like canon?
I don't think so.
Okay, because I could have sworn that like they mentioned something about him falling in love with uh what's her name who did the in the Jedi Academy
No,
the
she's not mentioned in this.
okay. Not by name, but I thought they like insinuated that he had fallen in love before, and I was like,
It
wait, are
might have
they?
been an indirect mention where they were like, "Oh, you fell in love with a doctor." I don't I
Okay,
don't
okay.
remember.
Yeah. Because again, this book is very forgettable. I'm sorry. Like, and again, guys, we talk about how we want to be truthful in these stories and with our reviews. And this is one that just isn't catching us like it probably should have. And we
Yeah.
have one more, and then we will, of course, be reviewing the comic by the volume. We will wait until all of them are
Which I
at
think is
least
going to be February?
yeah, it'll be fairly soon. Because I think I did see uh that they were already gearing up for like advertisements for the solicits and stuff. So so yeah, so we'll get to it soon enough. It's something that is on our list of like, hey, we need to get through this because it's
Mhm.
a part of history in the Star Wars timeline that we haven't seen yet. And I think that's going to be very exciting for sure.
Yes. 100%. But y'all, I think we've I know this was a very short review, but again, we don't have a lot of good things to say, and we don't like dwelling on things we don't like.
Yeah,
So,
100%. But guys, you can always find me at fanboyclay on Twitter. Of course, over on Twitter, I am just making some Marvel Snap content, talking about everyday life, a lot of stuff having to do with some random DC projects that James Gunn is deciding to green light, which is going to be very interesting. But go follow me there. Love to have any type of conversation. Of course, I also host the Ranger Alliance chat, which I think it was just decided. Off to the side here, I'm talking to Travis on the Geekverse Discord. Apparently, there are 7 Power Ranger parody movies on Tubi, that I think we're probably going to be reviewing on Ranger Alliance. So if you would like to listen to that, go follow our podcast. It's going to be very, very funny. I'm sure Joe will get a kick out of that. I'm sure. But yeah, go follow us there. Katie, what about you?
Y'all, you can find me on most social media platforms. It's at Slice of Katie. I have cut my social media time way down though. I am super proud of myself where I have a 2-hour timer set for social media on my phone, and I hit that for the first time yesterday. Um, so like in 2 weeks. So I'm doing very good. Not spending a ton of time on social media. Um, but I will always respond to stuff if you send me something. So that is again at Slice for Katie. Remember, you can find this show on Twitter. It is at Star Wars Alliance about the 8 and the Wars. Very important to forget it. That is also the same place you can email us as we prep for the Battle of Jakku, as well as Skeleton Crew. So, um, remember that's Star Wars Alliance, no A in the Wars at gmail.com. And Clay, tell us the phone number, please, because I cannot pull that up off my
Yes.
iPad.
So the phone number, which I coincidentally have started using as my work phone number, so it will actually be on me at all times. You can send me a text, send me an email, send me a voicemail on this phone. Of course, that is 830-538-4828. I will be vexing these voicemails and phone calls.
Vetting?
Vetting, not vexing. Jesus. I again 45 minutes of sleep, guys. I am so tired. You know how like you like stay in the water too long and your eyes just feel like they are so like just swollen? That's how I feel right now. I need to get some sleep. But I still have 3 podcasts to edit after this. Yay!
Did
Um
you never edit Mace Windu?
I forgot. So I get to edit that one as soon as we get off
We
here.
recorded that a week and a half early, y'all, and Clay's just
Yeah,
slacking.
I am very much slacking. But yes, again, that phone number is 830-538-4828. You can give us your opinion on anything and everything that we talked about today and more. Give us your opinion on the High Republic novels or the comic or again, anything that we discussed here on the show. We would greatly appreciate it.
Yes. And y'all remember, after you listen to this episode, you can take a look or a listen at our Mace Windu, the Glass Abyss review. That review is out at the same time as this episode. The book is not out until October 15th. The embargo is up, however. I think we did a really good job sticking away from spoilers with that review. I think honestly, I'm very proud of that review, y'all.
Yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind giving us a listen, giving us some feedback on how you thought the review went, we would greatly appreciate it. But of course, if you're like, I would need to read the book first, then I'll come back to it. Of course, do that first. As the camera just swoops around. Next week, y'all, we will be here for our Tears of the Nameless review. So that is what you can expect next week. With that, I want to wish everyone a great day or night, whatever time of day you are listening or watching, and we will see y'all next time. May the force be with you.